You're listening to Investigation Insiders by Integris Intelligence.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Investigation Insiders. This is Forhad. Hope everyone is well. I'm happy to say that we're going to give it one more effort to try to do a video podcast. We have a couple of legends on the show today, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity to get them on video, so I have proof that this actually happened. First, let me introduce you guys again to my friend and senior advisor to Integris Intelligence, Ed Hartnett. How are you, Ed?
Good morning. Good morning, all. How are you doing?
Thanks for joining us again. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and then perhaps you can introduce our other guest in that you made it happen today, and you know him a lot better than I do.
Well, thank you, Forhad, and thank you, Joe, for having us on. It is my pleasure to connect you and your audience with Chief Anemone. He's a legendary fellow. I tease him a lot. I do it from a distance because he can't get his hands around my neck. But he's a legendary figure in not only in New York City policing, but in law enforcement across the country. And he last served as our chief of department, helping to institute what we're going to talk about later today, the CompStat process. I refer to him as a Mount Rushmore type, and he certainly is. I could go on, and again, he'll probably chastise me later for gushing too much about him. But anyway, please, Chief, again, welcome.
Thanks, Ed. And no, I'm going to chastise you for not building me up a little more. Good morning, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us, Chief. Ed and I had an extensive discussion on titles, because Ed was both the chief in the police department and a commissioner in Yonkers. So we had a long drawn out discussion, but at the end of it, we concluded the same thing. Doesn't matter what we call anyone else. You're the chief.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
Well, as are we. So obviously, Ed and I go back a while now, and this is your second time on the show, Ed. Last time was audio only, and it was a great show, actually. It was entitled, Are We Heading Back to the Crime Levels of the 80s? And it's actually one of our most popular shows, just obviously the subject matter. So perhaps just for the benefit of our audience, Ed, you can just talk about your background again once for us at a high level.
Okay, thanks, Forhad. I had a blessed career in the NYPD. I did 27 years. I left as deputy chief. Not to sound maudlin, but I came on the job, my parents are immigrants from Ireland. I had no idea how to make sergeant. And then, 27 years later, in the blink of an eye, I'm leaving the most prestigious police department in the world, in my view, as a deputy chief. Took about 4 days off. And by the way, I had some great jobs in NYPD. I was the commanding officer of the Intelligence Division. I was commanding officer of the Federal Drug Task Force. But I have to say that some of my best times, and I think Chief Anemone would agree with me, was being a cop in the 32nd Precinct in Harlem. I did patrol there in uniform. I did midnights in uniform. I wound up, you make arrests and you get recognized. I wound up in the plainclothes anti-crime team. So I had great jobs, glamorous jobs, so to speak. But one of the best jobs I had was being a cop in a 3-2. Going to Yonkers, then after that, after a few days, I left the NYPD, went right to Yonkers, did 5 years there. It was a cultural shift for them and for me, but a great place, great cops. Again, did 5 years there, put some things in place that I think helped with crime and also helped mend some of the fences with the community. Community was feeling left out and disenfranchised, so to speak. And I think we made some good inroads getting them back, that we can be partners with them. And I think it worked well. And my success is built upon that, which I think the chief would agree that that's one of the most important things you can do. You leave something good in place, and then you hope that others that come after you build on that and make it even more successful. Then I've had a good run in the private sector, again, working with gentlemen like yourself. So I guess to put it bluntly, I'm a lucky cat.
As are all the people who had the fortune to work with you, Ed. And Chief Anemone and I met through Ed, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know him and just hear him speak more recently. And I'll tell you what, you were way ahead of your time, Chief Anemone. And so perhaps you can provide a high level overview of your career.
All right, so I started looking for a summer job in 1964. I took a civil service test for police trainee, a civilian position in the police department. I was hired in December 1964, and I ran through the different ranks. I was a cop, a foot cop in Coney Island. I was a foot cop in the 3-4 precinct in Washington Heights. I was an anti-crime cop up there as well. I was an anti-crime cop in the brand new citywide anti-crime section, working in plain clothes throughout the city, 100 of us. It was a glorious experience, and you knew, Forhad, and for your audience, we were doing well. We were catching people in the act, committing violent crimes. I got promoted to sergeant and had the great fortune to end up in the 3-2 precinct, the 32nd precinct in Harlem. Met some great people there, worked with some great cops and supervisors and bosses. I learned an awful lot. I thought I was, pretty well versed until I hit the 3-2 precinct. I was 4 years there as a sergeant. I came back twice after that as an executive captain and then as a commanding officer of the precinct. So I served another 3.5, 4 years there in the 3-2. I became a special operations division executive officer after having served on an emergency basis during the Crown Heights riots. The people I was working with did some amazing work. They shut that riot down in one night. This is after 4 days of continuing violence. I became the disorder control czar as a result of Ray Kelly promoting me based on this performance in Crown Heights. So we revamped the protocols, the procedures, the training, the equipment, and the staffing throughout the city for controlling protests, mainly though disorderly protests and riots. We did that in 1 year, working around the clock, training everyone we can, and then everyone got a booklet as a reminder with what they should do and what they had to do and how to do it. When Giuliani became mayor and Bill Bratton became the police commissioner, he appointed me, without even interviewing me, chief of patrol, just based on word of mouth. 1 year later, John Timoney became first step, and I took his job as chief of department again, and that was Mayor Giuliani's choice.
Right.
4 years of doing that. I loved every day of it. I was able to work with Jack Maple closely for the first 2 years being in headquarters, implementing his idea of this CompStat process. Sure. I retired in 1999, July 99, 35 years after starting.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What have you been doing since retiring?
So after I retired, Jack Maple had retired 3 years earlier. So he called me up almost immediately, said, I need you to fill in for me on a consulting agreement I had down in Jackson, Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for him. He went on to write and help produce a TV show. I don't know if Ed remembers the TV show, kind of loosely based on CompStat, but set in a different city. So I then just kind of rolled into this consulting.
Wow. Okay. Well, you already talked about you talked about a lot actually already. So let me ask Ed. Ed, can you remind us all again about how you got into law enforcement? The chief already talked about that a little bit.
It's funny. Again, I was the only one in my family that went to college. I was the youngest, so I had a degree. Went to Fordham. Very proud of that. So my parents, especially my mom, thought, again, she never had any experience with college and stuff. So when she heard I was joining the police department, she was appalled because, naturally she thought her son was going to be like the next John Kennedy and become president of the United States. Obviously not happening. But, I was, 23 years old, I guess, and I took the job. I said, it wasn't like I had like this dream from childhood to become a cop. I just thought there were layoffs in the mid 70s. So they weren't hiring any cops for 5 years. So 1979, they kind of opened the books and they had some money. So they said they could hire a small class. And I was fortunate enough to be in the first class. So I was in the first class with 400 classmates that went into the police department in 5 years. And I said, I'm going to give this a couple of years. If it doesn't work for me, I'm going to leave and I'll still be young and I'll do something else. But once I got in, and the chief would back me up on this, it becomes a natural fit for those that want to be cops. Just hit me right away that I belong here. And that's how I started. So I was a young cop in the Bronx in a training unit. It was great. Then they said they put down transfers in what we call orders, personnel orders. So the orders come down. And all the orders come down. We're all rookies and anxious to get going. I want to go to Harlem. I want to go back to the Bronx somewhere. And my name is not anywhere on the orders. Then a separate order comes down. Me and 9 other classmates wind up in Manhattan traffic area. No small child growing up ever says, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a cowboy. Yeah. No kid ever says, I want to go to Manhattan traffic area. It's just not the place for a young cop. So I was there and they said, welcome to your last command. That was my welcome. Welcome to your last command. You're never getting out of here. It was a real morale boost, So I did 18 months there in an environment where basically they said, write tickets till your hand falls off. And it just wasn't my cup of tea. My career progressed from there and I took some tests and I did well. I did, you got to put the work in. I always tell young people coming up, they put that material out to study 6 months ahead of time. Start studying when the stuff comes out. If you don't, the competition is very, very intense. At least it used to be, and especially when you make captain. And once you make captain, then it's all merit-based promotion, so to speak. So there's no more tests. So now you're competing, and it's not palpable. You don't see it every day, but that there's some real stars out there trying to excel and make the next rank and the next rank and the next rank. So I was fortunate that, some good people looked out for me, like Pat Hartnett, like Chief Anemone, like others. So, you gotta be recognized and they'll bring you up. They'll recommend you for promotion. It's not a guarantee, but I was fortunate that I got three bumps, as we call it, after that. So I was blessed.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Chief Anemone, do you happen to remember your first interaction with at the time police officer Hartnett, or was it higher ranking?
No, he was a police officer, and I was I believe the captain in the 3-2 precinct. Am I right, Ed?
Yep, you were the XO, your brand new XO.
Yeah. So I may have had some words with Ed. He was having coffee or something, off out of his sector, I believe. Does that refresh your memory, Ed? Was that you and Brian?
Forhad, just a glimpse of the culture back then. The chief was, listen, kidding aside, he got there as a young captain. He'd been there as a sergeant. And when new bosses are coming in like captains, we checked them out. I mean, I know I got checked out. He got checked out. So we looked at this guy and words came to mind like, active cop, a little crazy, loves the 3-2. Those things resonated with us. So we knew he was a guy that, you couldn't BS him. He's a street guy. Some of the other guys would come in and parachute in from headquarters and they would look around and they would go, oh my God, I'm in Harlem. He was not like that. He was not intimidated by Harlem. He knew that the good people of Harlem, the mostly good people in Harlem, appreciated the hard work the cops were doing. So we checked him out and he passed with flying colors. And you also, back then the culture was you avoid captains. Really, remember the precinct commander would come in at that. I'm talking like the late 70s, early 80s. The precinct commander would come in and you would avert your gaze. You wouldn't even look at this guy. And you would hide as best you could. And if he knew your name, almost all the time, it was for bad reasons. Like years later, I become a precinct commander and there's a line of guys outside my door with all kinds of real and imagined problems.
So Just to put a little more context, there's a blackboard in the, just beyond the front door of the precinct.
Sure.
And at the very top of it, it says, see the captain or see the CO.
Okay.
You never wanted to see your name written in chalk on that because it was never good news. Am I right, Ed?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Never
Chief,
good news.
long after before you became CO of the precinct, commanding officer of the precinct, there was a guy, he'll remain nameless. We had a good CO. He got promoted. He moved on. Another guy comes in, and he was one of those guys. He's like, I don't belong here. He didn't belong. He was a headquarters guy. His uncle had been a high-level police commissioner. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He went by the nickname Wacky, and I'll leave that. But he did not want to be there. So somebody says, hey, Hartnett, Murphy, the CO wants to see you. So I'm thinking he must want to give us many accolades for this wonderful work we're doing to preserve the community and stop violence, stuff like that. He calls us in and he's basically saying, what are you guys up to out there? What are you? Then he basically says, like, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
Now, again, kidding aside, he was suspicious of us thinking that because he was thinking Knapp Commission, 10, 15 years earlier, and they were out there, must be stealing from people and robbing people and dealing drugs, whatever. So it would have been a morale killer, like we would have said, oh wow, we thought we were doing a good job. And this is long before CompStat. And but we basically said we're not doing anything wrong, and we're making good arrests and making good cases and good prosecutions. But that was his way of doing business. We didn't let that get us down. And he was gone soon after that, and another good guy came in, so we were okay. But it's a crazy culture when you think about it.
Yeah, really, it was.
Absolutely. So Chief Anemone, talk about. I know this is a really, really unfair question, but it's always curious to me when someone like yourself or Ed have so many experiences in their life and with their career, how they answer this question. Talk about a memorable moment or moments in the police department that come to mind when I ask that question.
Yeah. So, personally in my life, the most memorable moment, and it was a tragedy. We lost a 4.5-month-old daughter to while I was in the 3-2 to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome.
Sure.
I was a sergeant in the 3-2 when it happened. As it turned out, I got promoted 5 months later. So it was kind of I was promoted to lieutenant. I really didn't have the heart for it. But the cops at the 3-2, every single one of them went out of their way to call, to send a note, to come to the mass, etc. I remember that to this day. I remember these guys who were there, who helped me through it, battled through it. And then by the time I was promoted and went to the next command as a lieutenant, I was able to put some of that, behind me.
Mm-hmm.
In the job, there's an awful lot. But that first attack on the World Trade Center in February 1993, I got a call from Chief Salvaggi. He says, the guy that replaced you over in Special Operations Division, because I had just left there, I was promoted at this point by Kelly. He says he doesn't really know the job well enough now to help us here at the scene. I left headquarters, scooted on over there with a couple of cops and a detective. And, we, after interviewing a couple of people there, what are you guys doing? The basic answer from the emergency service boss who was there, we're waiting for the smoke to clear. I said, that's not good enough, guys. You can do better. What about the high-rise rescue plan? Well, we've never practiced it, I says, well, today's going to be the day. And they did it flawlessly, repeatedly throughout that day and early evening, taking first rescuers up to the top of the building and elevator mechanics who couldn't get anything to work, and then taking people down who couldn't make their way down from those upper floors. The highlight, honestly, of everything up to that point in my career.
That's interesting. By the way,
Yeah.
on a side note, that day of that first attack, on the World Trade Center. At that time, I was actually in high school.
Oh,
And so now here's my route to school. I went to Brooklyn Tech. Was that I'd take the A train to Hoyt Schermerhorn, cross over, and then take the G train back to Fulton. Now, at Hoyt Schermerhorn, there was a transit police station at Hoyt Schermerhorn, right? And on that day, we didn't know what was going on, but we were coming back from school. And as we were making the cross over to the other side to take the A back, we were actually attacked by a group of people. And we realized after the fact that there were no cops there.
Yeah.
So just the interesting, like how, like what memories come back to who,
Yeah.
but as soon as you started talking about that, I remember that. Ed, what do you recall? What's a memory that you have, perhaps that has Chief Anemone in it, or not?
Real quick, before I get into whatever memory I have of the job, I have several memories of the job involving the chief. But on a bit of a somber note, the chief mentioned that sadly the tragic death of his daughter, and he mentioned that at a eulogy he did for police officer Gene Mullahy, who was the chief's best buddy in the job. He drove him as a sergeant. When you're in the job, when you make sergeant, you get a driver. So somebody takes you around on patrol because you're busy doing all the other stuff. So you need somebody to drive you around the precinct. And the chief and Gene Mullahy bonded early on. And so throughout the chief's career, as he went up the line, Mullahy would be his driver, whatever rank he was, and we would see them together. Now he's chief of department, and Gino's driving them, and we would look at the two of them driving away, going, "What are those two talking about in the car?" Because Gene was a crime fighter. Gene was a great cop, and he was a cop's cop. He became a union delegate, and when you met him, he looked like a cop from an old movie, like out of Central Casting.
Yeah.
And he came off like surly and cynical, and
he had a heart of gold.
Down deep, a heart of gold, the kindest guy you'd ever meet. Once he got to know you, and if he liked you. If Gino didn't like you, you had a problem. You had a problem. But he was the best, and I just want to say rest in peace to a good man.
Yeah.
But good guy, very good guy. The memories from the chief, especially when CompStat started, and it was intense. It was intense, and it gets a little dramatized too much on TV and stuff about how they would have a guy do bad at CompStat, and then they'd be like a trap door. He'd fall through it right down to the pension section. It wasn't that bad, but I saw it later on a smaller scale going to Yonkers. When you're instituting something like that, that's a real significant cultural change. Yeah. It doesn't come easy. People are set in their ways. They fought it, and they were resistant to it. Some of them were asked to leave. These high-level chiefs were basically told, you're not on the team. They learned quick enough together at CompStat, push that culture change to where we got to the historic crime levels that we got to. And it wasn't easy. It was at times, Chief, I know we've talked in the past, it was at times a bit harsh. Sometimes it was viewed as a way to get back at people. I didn't see that. I saw that when people had answers, they did well. I mean, Jack Maple himself would say, a bad plan is better than no plan. Like, don't get up there and say, I don't know what to do. Just throw some ideas out. We'll kick them around. We have a big forum of people here that can work on it. So I always said it was a good accountability mechanism where it wasn't like they were looking over your shoulder and breathing down your neck. It was like, tell us what you got. Tell us what we need to do to help. What resources do you need that you don't have right now? It was an outstanding forum.
No, I appreciate that, Ed. I mean, again, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit more in a moment. Now, I have two different questions for you guys. Chief Anemone, this is a question I started asking more recently, and again, the answers have been very, very interesting. But can you talk about some of your mentors who helped guide you through life and career and all that sort of stuff?
So starting from the very beginning, my grandparents, they were always there for me. It was my grandfather who read the civil service newspaper, told me, Louis, you just graduated high school. take the test, even if you just work for the summer, before you go to college. Yeah, and it became, from a summer job, it ended up becoming my career. So
Right.
grandpa, grandma were always there with guidance, with ideas, with love all the time. Once I entered the department, I had a lieutenant in the when I was a police trainee in the old 14th precinct, the castle on 30th Street, Nick Zerpola. Later on, he retired, I think, as a deputy chief. But he did me a solid that affected my career. He enabled somebody to help me out in the early process between probationary status and full-time hiring. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, I would have never been there at the PD. So I thank him. He's departed since, but a good man. He did me a solid in the job. Dick Dillon was the inspector I worked for, and when I was training those rookies in NSU, I was the training lieutenant for that NSU in Midtown Manhattan. Dick Dillon was my immediate boss. He looked out for me. He knew the job, well-educated guy. And when I ran into a little bit of trouble with the chief of patrol, and I was transferred out of that unit, I was sent to punishment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I guess within 4 or 5 months, Dick Dillon had me transferred to the street crime unit, where I was a lieutenant commanding a taxi squad. He never forgot people who were loyal workers. He always kept an eye out for us. And I learned from that. And I learned from Nick Serpola, if you can help somebody young in the job, if there's some little thing you can do to push somebody along, hey, do it. Once I got beyond the rank of captain, Mario Salvaggi took me under his wing. He was the executive officer in the borough of Manhattan North. Gave me good advice over the years. I looked up to him. And as fate would have it, when I became chief of patrol, I replaced my mentor. Mario Salvaggi had been the current chief of patrol. But we remained friends through it all. He was a gentleman and a smart guy, commanded 5 different precincts in the city of New York.
Sure. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Ed, I'm going to ask you a little bit of a different question, because I know that there's something that that's always concerned you, but you're working on it more in recent times. Can you talk a little bit about the law enforcement retiree suicide awareness campaign that you've been working on more recently?
Thank you, Forhad. Yes, I'm a member of, and I'm sure the chief is as well, I'm a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP. It's a great organization. I've been a member for 20-something years. And it's a global, as the name implies, it's a global configuration of cops, chiefs, and executives from all over the world, mostly based in the United States. I serve on a committee there called the Private Sector Liaison Section. And we do some good work, and we've done some subcommittee work on drones, on workplace violence, on active shooters, stuff like that. So, and I'm the vice chair of this group. So along with the chair is my good friend, Teresa Tobin, retired chief. So a couple of years ago, a friend out of nowhere, and Chief Anemone will back me up on this, police suicide is, like suicide in general, is very complicated. And then police suicides are even more so. But again, they have the weapon. It's easy access. That's part of it, and it runs the gamut. You could see some people that have just terrible things going on in their personal life, and it leads up to a point where they figure there's no hope and they commit suicide. And that happens a lot. And the job has done a lot of good work with peer group support and psych services and all this other good stuff, and counseling and trauma counseling, early intervention. The job, I think, the profession of policing has progressed very well from decades ago to where we are now. It's still a big problem, but it's been mitigated a lot because of this good work that's been done. But there is a phenomenon out there, and I'm not sure of how widespread it is, but it is certainly a problem. I can think of at least 5 people that I worked with that committed suicide sometimes years after they retired. and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Some of them have, sadly, there's a broken relationship or financial difficulties or some other tragedy going on, maybe a gambling problem, maybe a substance problem, who knows? And sadly, it happens. On the other side is like this, I know at least one or two that quote unquote had everything to live for, and it still happens. And sometimes it happens 5, 10, 15 years later. So it's something I started trying to take a look at. And right now it's really just a raising awareness campaign. So really, anybody listening, if they have any thoughts on how to approach this, please, contact Integris and they can pass it on to me. Because right now it's a hard problem to identify. It's right now the problem we see is tracking. How do you track them? Because the scenario I always give is, say someone retires from the NYPD or the Chicago PD or the LAPD. They had a nice career. They did 25 years, whatever. Now they relocate. Now they live in Arizona or South Texas or Florida. Maybe they get back into the private sector and they've started a career. Now, 5, 10 years, 15 years later, they commit suicide. And how do you even know to track them? I mean, I talked to the pension section, NYPD. They don't track them. The military has a horrible problem with suicide, but at least they have a clearinghouse of the Veterans Administration that there's some pot that info is going into that they can maybe identify these incidents by agency, by region, by sex, by age, by gender, whatever. So we don't have that in policing right now. There is national organizations like the Fraternal Order of Police. I'm getting in contact with them. I'm talking to various labor leaders. I'm actually doing things like this on podcasts and shows that friends have, just to get the campaign started about raising awareness. Like, how do we identify this problem? Because it's really the cart before the horse. If you talk about treatment is great. Count me in. But right now we don't even know the scope of the problem. So it's something. It's becoming a bit of an initiative on my part. I do not want to be the poster child of this, but I will if I have to be, because if I can get maybe a think tank in Washington D.C. to take a look at this and put some resources into it. My wife had a suggestion about artificial intelligence. And I'm thinking, if you could cross-reference death certificates with suicide listed on them, and then a former police, maybe now you got the common ground. That crossroad might be a way to start identifying this problem. So I'm going to keep at it. I'm a bit stubborn. I'm going to keep at it. And I'm hoping that I have people already, good people joining in. I got some labor leaders on the line that are going to look into it with me. So I appreciate letting me talk about it a little bit, but I'm going to see if I can get something started on this anyway.
Thanks for sharing that, Ed.
Good work with that. Good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't do this on video very often, right? But I wanted to just make sure that you gentlemen and everyone else knew my sports affinity, and I have a Mookie Wilson's book in the background. Just out of curiosity, what's your baseball affiliation? I have a feeling I'm going to get the wrong answer here, but I'll ask anyway.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, Forhad. I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. And when they left, I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
I became a St. Louis Cardinal fan until the Mets arrived on the scene.
Okay.
I've been a loyal Met fan since 1962.
Ah, nice. So what about you, Ed? Don't screw this up, man.
I grew up in Washington Heights, so Polo Grounds was already closed by then. So I'm a Yankee fan, but I do like the Mets. I went to a lot of Met games as a kid because if you remember, we didn't have a whole lot of money in Washington Heights. So I think it was Borden's Milk Company used to have these things, these coupons you cut off. And if you got like 35 of them or something, you got a free ticket to a Met game. And there was the bus terminal, the Port Authority bus terminal had a bus going directly to Shea Stadium. So I saw as many Met games as I did Yankee games. So the Mets are always my second team. As a matter of fact, I was in Shea Stadium, probably on one of those Borden's free tickets, the night that the Mets clinched September 24th, 1969. They beat Steve Carlton. I am a Met fan, but the Yankees are my favorite team.
Awesome. Yeah, we did a podcast with Ed Davis, who was the Boston police commissioner.
Yeah.
That was a fun discussion. This is our only moment of glory in
well, listen, I'll count. I like Ed Davis; he's a good man. But I'll counter that. My high school would do a golf outing every year, and some guy that graduated from I went to Cardinal Spellman in the Bronx. He had a connection to the Yankees, so every golf outing he'd have a Yankee there. So some days it was Dwight Gooden, some days it was Bucky Dent. It was great, but one time he had Mariano Rivera. And
Oh.
and if you ever see Mariano Rivera, he's that guy. He comes off as a very spiritual, religious guy, and he really is. He's just a really decent guy. So they did a little question and answer. So I said, well, I'm going to get the opportunity. Chief, no disrespect to CompStat, but getting questioned at having this forum and having your forum, I prefer speaking to Mariano Rivera, frankly. So I raised my hand and I asked him, please tell us what it's like to beat the Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park. And Mariano starts out, well, I always respected my opponents and I know how hard they work. And he goes on like for a couple of minutes about all this really, really high level, high minded stuff about the great. But then he smiles. He goes, but I have to tell you, I love beating the Red Sox in Fenway Park. That was it. That made my day.
I got to tell you, we're generally a family-friendly show, but I just want to highlight before we move on to a couple of things. You referred to someone as wacky. I'm not even going to get into that, right? Meaning you knew someone wacky, and you swore several times, right? Now I have some material on Mariano Rivera, which because I'm polite and because this is a family-friendly show, I'm not even going to address. I'm joking.
Swore,
he's the greatest.
Yeah,
I swore that's bullshit.
So look, that was a entree. That was my version of CompStat before we start talking about CompStat.
Can I tell you, because a lot of people hear about CompStat,
right?
But having been to the early ones, and then a couple of jobs I had, I used to go to every CompStat.
Right.
But when it first started, and if you don't mind, it's first of all, there was CompStat on Wednesday and Friday. And basically the way it was the city's broken up into different patrol boroughs. So there's several patrol boroughs beyond just the 5 regular boroughs. So basically, if your crime was up in the prior reporting period, you went to CompStat on Wednesday. And if your crime was up, another borough coming on Friday. 7 a.m. And I'm telling you, 7 a.m., he was sitting down with Jack Maple and the rest of the command staff, and you had to be there in your seat at 7 a.m. And woe unto him or her who walked in late. So right off the bat, it was a culture shift. Because, I mean, listen, the NYPD, the executive corps, is kind of a 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Operation. It's not a 9 to 5, not 8 to 4. You're expected as a captain or above that you're starting work at 10. At the latest, you're starting at 10 a.m. and you're staying until 6 p.m. and usually later than that. So these guys come in and they say 7 a.m. Now, that doesn't mean you're going home at 3 o'clock. That means you're there at 7 a.m. and then you're going to go back and do your regular workday. Yeah. So, but it was a big cultural shift. And then it was like there was a batting order. But he didn't always follow the batting order. So you could come in and say, okay, I did okay this last week. They're definitely going to call Joe. He's got a horrible week. And they're going to call Pete. He's out to lunch. They're not calling me. I might even get by without even getting called at all. And you'd sit there all nice and happy, and then they would call you. Because there was always a bit of a curveball, and it's like always a bit of, and then there was other guys in other units that weren't in precincts. They weren't, most of the people got questioned were precinct commanders and detective squad commanders, and then some specialty units. But then they kept adding more and more people to this thing. But at the end, Chief, there'd be a couple of hundred people in the room, right?
Yeah, easy.
At least.
So let me take a little of this oxygen. That gives you a little context to what's going on here.
Yeah.
So we thought, Jack and I thought, by doing it at 7 a.m. twice a week, right? We'd have 2 boroughs every week. In a month, we had an opportunity to speak to everyone in the city. Sure. And by doing it at 7 a.m., we weren't infringing on the normal captains and inspectors' workday. They still had their 10 to 6 workday. And but meanwhile, we got our crime fighting and crime prevention work done early in the morning. So we were doing them a favor, actually.
That sounds like it. I mean,
because, at that first meeting, people were answering phones and, checking. Wait a minute, this has got to change. And that was a 10 o'clock meeting, the very first one.
Sure.
So that was a quick change to 7 a.m. Shut your phones off and let's do crime fighting business.
And Chief, you remember how the technology improved. I mean, the first ones, guys would come in, precinct commanders would come in, or detective commanders would come in, and they'd have
With
like
an
a flip
easel.
chart, flip chart, pins, and then some poor guy's pins would fall out. And he's like, oh, my, you'd be like little red pins on the floor. What was that? I don't know. Stick them somewhere. But the technology got so great. And Chief, if I could too, one thing that we don't talk about a lot about CompStat was how it impacted investigations and investigative follow-up. Because you remember in the old days, and Jack Maple used to harp on this a lot, like 5 kids would rob somebody.
Yeah.
And 1 or 2 of them would get caught. There'd still be 3 of them out there, and they would close the case. So that case, so now those 3 robbers are still out there robbing more people. And the detectives, they would say, hey, listen, we made arrests, case closed. Yeah. That all changed with CompStat. Everybody had to be arrested before you could close that case.
So, you know, the idea here was, listen, we're doing pretty good work, but we were a comfortable organization. And, you know, for the most part, we were taking it easy. And our point was, we can be so much better. We can be so very much better if we just give it a little push, try a little harder. So the idea was with this incident that Eddie brings up, if you got 5 guys from my old neighborhood in Brooklyn, Eddie, and they went out and 1 or 2 of them got grabbed, right? They wouldn't say anything. The other 3 would come back. And the next time they went out, they grabbed 2 different guys from the neighborhood, and the 5 of them would go back out again. So the first 2 that got grabbed, those are acceptable losses.
Right, right.
You're not stopping. The detective is closing his case, you know, with an arrest, but you're not creating any crime prevention by doing it.
Yeah, you know, that's actually a great point. And look, I know you both love the police department. I know you both love law enforcement, right? But can you talk a little bit, Chief Anemone, about the police department and what created the need for CompStat, right? And you know, truthfully, I ask you to be, sort of like honest about like the need for it within the police department, right?
So we were big, we were a huge bureaucracy, and nobody was asking questions, Forhad, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis about crime. The police department, I was told early on as a young captain, 3 things you had to, the 3 C's: keep the community happy, keep the civilian complaints down, and don't have a corruption case. There was no C for crime in that equation. You had pockets, you had good people out there working to prevent crime and to serve the citizens despite headquarters, not because of headquarters. So that's the kind of milieu that we were in 1994. A couple years earlier, you had over 2,000 homicides in the city, right? The idea was, let's be that better organization. This is a way that Jack thought might help. He couldn't find anyone else. I don't know if I was his first choice to help him, but at some point he ended up coming down to me. Sure. You know, can you give me a hand here? Sure. I knew I had a short shelf life. I didn't know how long I was going to be there in headquarters. First trip down there, it wasn't my cup of tea. But I knew the streets. I knew crime. I was a precinct commander a few times over. I could do this stuff. And I had good ideas, and I knew I worked with people who had great ideas.
Sure.
Let's get them, let's get everybody moving.
Sure.
And that was the impetus behind it. You had a lot of naysayers. You had people, and again, in a bureaucracy that large, with people that are fighting, you have to have a couple of sharp elbows along the way.
Right.
If you're at a meeting, and I was at these meetings, right, sitting alongside Jack, and somebody would answer, to a question maybe about, did you do any follow-ups, any door knocks after the series of burglaries in an apartment building in Queens?
Mm-hmm.
Chief, we did this, we did that. Did you do the follow-up? You know how hard it is, Chief, to do these follow-ups? Do you know how much time it takes? How hard it is? How about living in that building? Having everything you own stolen repeatedly
Right.
because nobody's doing the door knocks.
Right.
And what is it? What's the purpose behind the door knock? Because for everyone, I mean, they knock on the door. If you answer, they'll ask, "Oh, is Johnny here?" No, Johnny doesn't live here. Okay. They go to the next door and they knock. No one answers, they break in. But that door that they knocked and that's a witness. That's someone that can give you and you can go out and work that case now. And the idea Jack had, debrief everybody that gets arrested, no matter how minor the crime, talk to them. Give them a cup of coffee or a soda from the machine. Sit them down and say, "Hey, listen, do you know anybody who's engaged in serious crimes, shootings, gun selling, narcotic selling?" And we build information and build cases off that. They weren't doing that for years. You know when we did that stuff? On a high profile media case. Oh, we rolled everything out for those cases. And our point was, let's try doing this every day. I had a guy tell me at a CompStat meeting, a senior lieutenant in a homicide squad, "Chief," he said, "we can't, this was a shooting. It wasn't a homicide." And the guy, the victim shows up at the hospital, he's uncooperative. So my question was, well, if it were a homicide, how cooperative would that victim be? Well, no. Well, treat this shooting as if it were a homicide. If you can't get this guy to cooperate, and make believe it's a homicide and solve this case.
Sure.
So, and Jack had ideas every meeting, along the same lines. Let's do this. Let's push this. We can be better. We saw the results every week.
Right.
Just asking them to send back the numbers quicker on a weekly basis, and then finally on a daily basis.
Yeah. Just thinking about, like, again, just how ahead of your time the group was on using statistics to be better. So I mean, you all mentioned Jack Maple many times. Ed, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the other pioneers of this? Just so you could talk about Chief Anemone as well, and he doesn't have to talk about himself.
Yeah, thank you, Forhad. Listen, I mentioned Mount Rushmore. I say it over and over again. The four NYPD or National Crime Fighting Mount Rushmore guys are Lou Anemone, Jack Maple, John Timoney, and Bill Bratton. And I would challenge anyone to go against that. But the facts are the facts. Jack Maple, and it's funny, I got to know Jack better after he left the job. And anytime I'd see him, he'd say, we should have promoted you. And by the time they left, I'd already been bumped a couple of times. But I'm like, yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks for reminding me. But, we got to be friends. I was honored I attended his bachelor party at Elaine's. But he and Chief Anemone in tandem brought seminal seismic changes to the way we did business. I mean, I use the word culture quite a bit. The culture before CompStat, when the chief talked about precinct commanders, the precinct commander and the detective squad commander in almost every police precinct are in the same building. One guy's on the first floor, one guy's on the second floor. Back then, the precinct commander might know how many murders he had for the year. The detective squad commander would probably know the murders and probably know how many robberies he had. That's it. They didn't meet regularly. They hardly ever spoke. Sometimes I bet they just passed each other in the hall and really didn't even know each other's names. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's true. Years later, I'm a precinct commander in the CompStat era. My guy upstairs, and again, part of the problem too is technically we're in different silos. The precinct commander, I'm in patrol. Detectives, they're in detective bureau. So really, I'm not his boss, but CompStat made us work together a lot. So pretty much every day, the precinct commander, me, and the detective squad commander upstairs would meet. And luckily, we had good rapport. We liked talking about bad guys. We actually went out a couple of times and caught bad guys ourselves. So that was what CompStat brought about. So Jack Maple was the guy that changed that stuff. The chief mentioned John Timoney, who's came from the same neighborhood as me, Irish immigrant, Dublin born, highly educated, street guy. he was he was tough as nails, like to mix it up a little bit in his younger days. But a guy like him, when guys like me see a guy from our neighborhood rise to the highest levels, and then he became the police superintendent in Philadelphia, he became the chief in Miami, an outstanding career. And again, of course, it all starts with Bill Bratton. Bill Bratton was not like that. He was like I liken him to an orchestra leader. He didn't want to play the violin. He didn't want to play the piano, but he got guys who could play those instruments. He got guys like Lou Anemone and Jack Maple and John Timoney and others to join that orchestra to bring about this change. As he used to say, it's a big battleship going in one direction. We got to turn it around. It takes time to turn that battleship around. And they did. Collectively, they turned that ship around.
It was like turning an aircraft carrier moving north up the Hudson River, swing it around 180 degrees, and now you're doing flank speed in no time at all.
No,
It was an amazing feat. And I agree 100% with Eddie Hartnett's comments as to those people that led this, made this happen.
So what, Chief, what worked, what didn't work initially, and what had to be tweaked over time? Just understand the process a little bit more of, how
Okay.
it evolved. Yeah.
So the idea was the same way Bratton became this orchestra conductor and created the teams that were going to do this. We wanted teams out in the field. Working in these silos that Eddie talked about wasn't working.
Right.
So we want them to stand at the podium together. Detective commander, the precinct commander, the narcotics commander, the local transit police commander, and the housing bureau commander. And now, as we discussed, what the map showed and what the report showed in the way of crime, we would direct the questions one to the other.
Sure.
And, the greatest lie in law enforcement, Jack taught me early on, and we heard it repeatedly. We work very well together. Well, they didn't always. It's more like Eddie described, not even knowing the other guy's name.
Sure.
So this forced teamwork worked. But for Forhad, it wasn't easy. It was draining mentally, physically. We had to push this. So you had to follow up with questions.
Right.
And if you didn't, you let, somebody got away with something.
Right.
And you could never let them get away with any of the stuff that they said in public, because the rest of the room is looking at you, listening and watching, and they want to know whether or not this is going to be an excuse the chief or the commissioner is going to let slide.
Sure.
Can I use this next month myself?
Right.
Or are they going to shut this comment down? We heard the term public service homicide at an early CompStat meeting. Public service homicide. That's a cynical detective's way of describing a bad guy killing a rival bad guy. Language like that had to stop. That mindset had to be changed. And again, sharp elbows. People that say something like that in a room full of peers and superiors cannot, you can't let it stand.
That's a powerful statement, Chief, because again, it's always interesting to me about what we perceive, because again, I'm a citizen. I'm not law enforcement, but things you learn, even experiences that I personally had, it didn't always feel that way. Like the cops were actually on your side, right? And when someone like yourself says something like that, it's just the self-awareness that I think is just so critical to serving the public and I think you both would admit that there have been many mistakes made along the way, but the idea was, always to get better.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. And what worked, what didn't work. This whole idea of crime prevention, crime reduction. We tried to tell them early on, it's a journey, guys, gals. It's not a destination.
Right.
So get that mindset changed. We're not going to end when we leave. We're going to institutionalize this process because it works so well. And it is, it has been institutionalized in the department. It's not going away. Get that mindset, straight and go out there and do your job and see that your people do their job. The other piece of it, why we had a room full of a couple of hundred, uh, I would visit every day, someplace in the police department or a couple of places. And Gene Mullahy, my driver, best friend, pal, and bodyguard, would have a pad and a pen. And as we went through the station house or the narcotic unit or the detective squad, you know, we talked to the commander, the lieutenant, the captain, whoever it might be. So why is this bathroom not functioning? Oh, we put a work order in a month ago. Didn't So the next CompStat meeting, we have the plumbing section, building maintenance at the meeting. Now tell us, have you fixed that yet? Why not? And that sends a message through the whole department. So every time we went somewhere and saw something, that was amiss, we tried to do our best to fix it through the meeting so that everyone could see, we're trying to solve your problems with you as well.
What are your thoughts?
The first cornerstone of CompStat is accurate and timely intelligence. So we need the crime reports to be filed and not cooked and not destroyed, not discarded. There was sadly a couple of cases in Midtown years ago where one precinct was like 25% down in grand larceny. That's like pickpockets and bag snatchers and all that stuff. Every other precinct around was up 30%. So they call them into CompStat and they're saying, there's like a little hole in the donut. And they call them into CompStat, tell us, Captain, what you're doing. And they knew ahead of time. This is after you left, Chief, but they knew ahead of time. This guy was sauteing the books. But it's rare. But I was actually in charge. Commissioner Safer years later put me in charge of the quality assurance division. I was there for a year and a half. It's not an exciting command, but I tell you, I got such a learning experience there. And one of the main functions of the quality assurance division is monitoring crime reporting. Yeah. And I can think of no other agency in the country that looks as hard at that crime data as the NYPD does. I mean, everything gets measured. And if they see a glaring thing like that, where one precinct is way down, but everybody else is way up, that causes some questions to be asked. So that's the kind of follow-up that we do internally, because the fourth tenet of CompStat is relentless follow-up. Now, that's mostly about crime, but it's also about internal mechanisms as well. There's relentless follow-up going on all the time. And you got to be on your toes, and you got to stay on top of it.
So true.
I guess let's start wrapping up here. Maybe one good story from each of you related to the CompStat, the meetings, the process, and to kind of close out here. So, Ed, do you want?
I'm going to let him go first. You know why? Because on a previous broadcast, it was unconscionable how the chief handled this, I thought, in my opinion. There was a vote from the audience, and he really pulled on their heartstrings about the stories he told and the poor kid growing up in Brooklyn. And
all right. So in the Eddie referenced this early on. Our first few meetings, people have to realize we really didn't have any technical support. So these precinct commanders would come to headquarters at 7 a.m. in the morning, carrying their easels, carrying a huge flip chart to put on, which had acetate overlays for each of the different crimes,
right?
Different colored on each acetate to show whether it was a daytime, an evening, or a nighttime crime. This is the way. I don't know what time their morning started. I'm going to confess, but this is how they showed up at headquarters. You had to see the elevator, at headquarters at 6:45 in the morning. Somebody would show up 10 after 7. I said, "Oh, are you here for the 7:15 CompStat meeting, Captain?" And the whole room would be looking at. So that was the early stuff. So we're sitting down, Jack Maple, myself, and 3 fellas from my staff. John Yo, great guy. Billy Gorda, great guy. And Gene White. I'm pretty sure Eddie knows all of them. So they're in we're in my office, and it's saying how unwieldy this process is at the let's fix this thing. What do we have to do? So the guys in my office said, well, he said, we spoke to IT, and what they tell you? Well, you have to put a request in. It's going to be 6 months, but we can't get, the cables down to the room where we're conducting the meetings. 6 months, that's unacceptable. We need a fix now. So John Yo says, I think I can do it. You're going to do something, how long is it going to take you? He says, I can get it done tomorrow.
Hmm.
This is the kind of thinking that was going on. Oh, yeah? All right. I said, I'm going to hold you to it. He went out to the local Radio Shack store with Gene and Billy. They bought the cable. They estimated how much they would need. They dropped it through the open window from the 8th floor where we had the meetings down to the IT section on the 7th floor, pulled it in, connected it to the mainframe, and bingo, we were in business with some form of technology.
Wow.
Just like that.
Hmm.
We had meetings where during the discussion, we talk about miracle workers. Some of these precinct people were just outstanding with the ideas, So the precinct commander in the 77th precinct in Brooklyn North has had a series of shootings. Some became homicides. Some were just felony assaults. People didn't die on a 2-block stretch of Nostrand Avenue between Eastern Parkway and moving north from there. So now he shows up at the meeting, and I said, you've got these numbers. He says, it's all under control, Chief. I said, under control? You've had 8 shootings, in the last couple of weeks. And on a 2-block, how is this under control? He says, well, I put up a checkpoint. A checkpoint? I said, how the hell is that going to stop or help? He says, it did already. I said, what do you mean? He says, we took a look at the shootings and the descriptions. He says, all the shooting, the perps were on bicycles.
Hmm.
He says, and they're riding on the sidewalk and they're pulling up in front, and where they see people that they think don't belong in the neighborhood, they take out their guns and they shoot them.
Hmm.
And the perpetrators are teenagers. The victims are teenagers. And it was all over smoke shops, marijuana sales, who controlled and who was moving in. He says, we set up a bicycle checkpoint every Friday, Saturday, Sunday over the last weekend. He says, we caught 6 guys, 6 guns. There hasn't been a shooting since. Case closed. Now, the flip side of that is, at that meeting, there's a representative from every other borough in the city. Oh, bicycle checkpoints. He goes back to the Bayside precinct. What is that, the 112 out in Queens, I think.
111, yep.
111. And he tells his precinct commander, oh, the chief wants bicycle summonses. He was very happy. So now they go out and they proceed to write summonses for bicycle violations on the sidewalk. But out in the 111, they're getting mom and dad riding with the kids on a Saturday morning, on a Sunday morning on the bicycles. That wasn't the purpose. So that's some of the things that go wrong with some of this. It sometimes gets, it's like that game of telephone,
Yeah.
This fellow was at the meeting, but he wasn't realizing that the one captain was solving a problem.
Right.
Bicycle summonses, bicycle checkpoint.
Right.
Terrific. That's one example of just, stunning work.
Sure.
They put their heads to it. And we allowed them.
Right. Right. What about you, Ed? What do you got?
Last thing from me, Forhad, real quick. I'll let the chief off the hook. It's not about him. I've mentioned in the past, I was the commanding officer of the intelligence division before and on 9/11 and after 9/11. And just to give my guys at the time a plug, when the towers got hit, everybody, we were actually gearing up for the UN General Assembly meeting coming in a couple months later. So everybody in the intelligence division, and the intelligence division sometimes gets a bad rap that they just guard dignitaries, they don't do anything else. They did an incredible job in the weeks and months on the day and on the weeks and months that followed. I mean, on the day of the attack, they commandeered boats, ferries. They did all kinds of stuff, and they were a critical part of getting people out of there, and then the investigations that followed. I mean, the FBI was overwhelmed with leads that came in after 9/11, and the ones that they couldn't handle, my guys handled. They answered every single one. Anybody that called up and said, my neighbor looks suspicious, my neighbor did this, my neighbor's part of this organization, we investigated it. So I always like to give them a shout out, because no disrespect to the succeeding administration that came in after Giuliani, but these people, these hardworking men and women, never got acknowledged for the work they did. So I wanted to take this time to just acknowledge them and say thank you.
Bravo, Eddie.
Well, thank you both for joining me for this episode. I think again, just getting to memorialize this in a way and having this discussion, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this and feel one way or another about it. I think it's part of history, right? And it's part of New York history and law enforcement history. And certainly you both played a role in it. And I just want to thank you again for joining me and speaking about it. Chief Anemone, it's a real honor to not only know you, but do this. And of course, Ed, same with you. So thank you both very much.
You're quite welcome, Forhad. You're a gentleman.
I appreciate it. And to everyone that's tuning in and following us and supporting us, thank you very much. Till next time. Have a great one.
God bless.
Take care.
Don't forget to follow us. We are on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.